Prologue. Oral sensitivity and range improved once self-removed, freed from sweet daily feed, bloated with eyes half closed, through incarceration dozed, imagination, dreaming hosed and water cannoned, patties fashioned, rations hues organic pinkish, offer clues of origins unspoken. Drowning alive, immersed within addiction's fiction, comfy cozy, rosy if nosy not, ignoring sounds one cannot hear in troubled sleep, whose snoring overwhelms the prison bells beneath the keep, subsonic deep, so sown, so reap. Act 1, Scene 1. Such progress is illusory, masquerading as advance, technology, tomfoolery, postmodern dance of slavery, humanity in baleful imitation of the tooth and claw of nature's unrestrainedness. If it can, it will. And so with us, a swarming mass, a hive of innovation crass, of exploitation dark, where cheery colours primary aloft around the park, held banner high by armies jury, lost in lazy certainty, of future painted hazily, in childish daubs of silicon, whose valley's shadow threatens as a pall too heavy to be lifted this side of oblivion. Evil runs its course and fades, but godless goodness knows no bounds nor entertains the race's end. Mary smut-blacked, roll-up cough-racked, living singly, ostensibly the other side of lunacy, her dark-faced lunar flare a smouldering stare at visitation's human form, though clucking soft with carrion. Voluntary, locals say, her fall from priestly power. A decade later, bonfire squatter, poking embers glower, she in distant calculation, sighed the ruin of her shack, tarpaulin stretched o'er crumbling stone, a home for one so far outside the comfort zone, the slop-filled trough, the rows of teats immersed in squeals of clenching teeth. Mad Mary, just one step for years away from drug death's caring. 2030's Tumnal Thursday. Mary sectioned, pigeons reckoned, poached for pies, the woods have eyes, and bird protection spies could track to shack marauder catapulting. She by drone caught in the act of plucking, gutting, cutting for soup, chucking for crows, the giblets. This minor fringement, efficient grotesque on top of her file, the poems and lies, to bring her in for good. And quietly done, through sniper stun, inert away bundled, trundled Mary, barely aware, a waking white, remarkably light, headed, celled, padded. Local leader sucking feeder notified by regional, and registers with red-rimmed gaze the news of Mary's capture, her chance of rapture through re-education, raise her years of odd miscomprehension, her well-meaning but destructive stance against advance, so pitiful in retrospect that such an intellect unable hold to loosen on ideas old, deadward, backward, pulseless, cold. Deemed threatening as hermitress in unsplendid isolation, danger to herself, poor dear, and better off without the cough, away from fags and filthy pies, now socializing by the trough, in common rooms armchaired and clean, to re-emerge unlikely though, given age and reputation, and her re-offending ego. Act 1, Scene 2. Irony not bitter but sulphuric, that carbon having science created, sprinted madly hell for leather, passing baton feverish each decade to the next, to rabid froth technologists with shaking hands their swollen glands for humours out of sorts, still push full force, a cast of millions from all nations glittering, the short-term goal prosperity, the vision though, machines that think. That really think and even feel, perhaps, that carbon having seminated, Artificial intelligence in lower cousin silicon is not a baton handing over, but instead the reins to smarter brains, and pest control will be their goal, their welcome obligation. They were not banned but frowned upon, those poems of woe and panic-stirring, anti-future luddish Marys. Disappeared from online stores, were quiet scrubbed by council bores from library shelves, and anyway it went unnoticed, no one pins or figs forgiving. In rarer, odder people's chambers, thumbed editions gave delight, in sight mayhap, but that diminishing, as conditioning the more effective, national organs grinding vective, brace surveillance, helpful gadgets, chips in every nook and cranny, chatter cessantly to nanny. Who'd have guessed those poems flattened under mattress secret spread, and daily read by unrough youth, no less the son of leader local. In chemistry, James held the reins in mind as shiny smart sir warbling table periodic spewed, group 4 and C and SI tumbling made our fellows smile. He liked the puzzles of his bedsheets, glimpse of quirky mind, then pause and flow, a reddish glow, a less than human unctuous voice, the joke inquiring. James head down, a sorry mumbling, lesson resumed, rumbling freed from humour, soullessly. Would have to wait till Saturday to stray, pretend some play, but actually lie in crevice unobserved, observing crows and idle black, his oddly fashioned passion sack, enwreathed in trailing smoke so still, in distant contemplation. 2 miles biking, half-hour hiking, James' delicious crevice lay, but unobserved not, nor was the tendrilled knot of smoke what he expected, rising as it did from blackened rubble stead of Lady Mary's habit. Crows mobbed murderous mongst the ruin, mightily aggrieved. The youth dry-mouthed and stomach-sickened guessed the nub of what had strickened, sense dictated beat retreat, lest he fall foul of regional heat, but cat's assassin overruled, and down the hillside steep he fooled, and kicked about the dirt and ashes, nothing there to claim as prize or souvenirs. His drumming ears and smoke-stung eyes then presence sensed, and in defence he stiffened, heartbeat hammering, and turned. Act 1, Scene 3. Damascus freeway bears a toll exacting and too much to pay for many on their zealous missions, blind though seeing with no sight restorable, the fell scales freeing only those whose knees are scraped and skinned in fearsome fainting fall, from lazy grace confronting all. And I a year since forward pitch, scabs picked and healed with scars that itch, a whispering reminder of my former sightlessness. As if needed with such change dramatic, branded lunatic and heretic, though labels such irrelevant as duty clear as day as ever was. Mahogany octagonal, for of each sex not alternating, altering though the futures flow through dams and dikes, their channeling disruption, psychs, technologists and social sighs, all tanned white smiles and slimly built, their bodies guilt rejecting, arrogant perhaps, corporeal, a weight to pull for now, but not in years to come. Around the table hand grenades of innovation lobbed in numbers breezily, so easily the fabric of the atoms lies rewoven, they so dulled and dazed by constant change, ensuring dreaming pays the bills to owners of the techno-mills. Yet looking close amidst the psychopathic smiles and cocained eyes was one in whom humanity sustained an embered glow. Regional Tech Chiefs' monthly brainstorm winding down, its octet melted, clotted knots of 2s and 3s, the greatest still in self-belief, stuck fast by egos near the door, but one already elevated, button pressed ground floor then free, in solitary air to breathe. Dispensing with the chauffeured ride and powdered treats, the streets he beats, deserted bar the hopeless cases, Stephen paces, feeling tugging stronger. 'Twixt their lives, both past and future citizens betrothed or left to rot, and he nostalgic for the magic times of dappled lover's child, yet thought of sacrificing wealth and power was laughable, not worthy of consideration. Sept Damascus verses, prickling conscience, unrelenting. Evening recalled Stephen Mary, cheekboned, pale, mascaraed eyes, so seriously smiling never. 2020 regional, first bringing tech chiefs monthly near, for parley, mannequins so rare to speak and then in pain it seemed. Within the year, her speech impromptu, twisted mouth imploring halting progress, meeting cancelled, she escorted, building out of, since not seen but poems read by some in silent gravitation. For him that bony puppetress held sway through enigmatic dress, a husky tenderness, and Stephen looked her up in database in room dark sept for LEDs that signal tech encircling, and blood to boots in reading of enrollment in re-education, knowing all too well that euphemisms hell and tech chiefs set upon a path in which deep sadness dwell. Act 1, Scene 4. It is because they think they know that scientists sow havoc woe, such faith profound in childish tropes, not glimpsing fragile pulleys ropes that keep the curtain raised above the ham-cram stage of vulgar play, before a public weary, but with nowhere else to turn. These clowns for whom no jape too tactless if a chance advancement, who would soundly sleep if not for ego's wrath, but conscience bothers not, where listing parts and cataloguing stands for understanding, but no sense of mystery for that they claim to know, and destined epochs hence to be adjudged the act of pratfalls bungles, no trapezist grace nor tamer's courage, only make-up's tear-stained grudges. A masterstroke defederation, regional autonomy, the need for central government erased thanks to technology. That nanny's database and programs optimize the region's progress, politicians obsolete, such sweet relief from smarmy noise, though efficiency of operations and the poise of nanny's crew occasionally unnerving. Such tyke was Martha gangly socksyke, helping build the algorithms calculating feeding rhythms, and the substance of the slops to optimize the collective props of comfort and the general sense that life could not be better. She believing in her mission, priestess of the godless good, as crackpot sister years ago had penned for all the good that did her, poor misguided soul. She realized that she herself epitomized all that her sis despised, the rational, compassional, humanistic, realistic, atheistic drive to carry all before, regardless of the bleating priests of former ages, all quite silent now, the cleansing done, religion's dead, replaced by 0-1 in strings uncountable, unfathomable, yet channeled by the Martha types to come out right, with bounteous result. She felt within her heart a pang of love unquenched, but knew it was some atavistic chemical wrench in work so shirked and shrugged on learning of poor Mary's dreadful state, now taken in and finally set straight. Around this time the dreaming starting, voices wailing, crying, hers and Mary's too, imploring both looking up and questioning, no answer given, but immense, a grieving, overpowering. Erratic rhythms duly noted, bracelets, pillows, nighttime whispers, not suspicious, no such human pertinence, but just because they could, and information never noise, so stored to mine in time for correlations and causations, that the gangly nanny goat, subconsciously afloat on waves of rem akin to anguish, speaking volumes retrospect, reflective of sororal bonds, demanding monitoring forthwith. Act 2, Scene 1. Someone claimed that God is dead, and set in train the trend of artless puffing up in chests of those who claim to own the world. for whom humility was weakness, toxic on the lips to breathe, to lose the race before a stride was strode. Forgetting, though, that puffing up is nature's jest, appearing larger to dissuade a predator, and needed only by a spineless few. Humility, bespeaking the acknowledgement of evil, forms dark and great of coldness unspeakable, asking thus obeisance grace that we be spared for now, and in return be duty bound in love and service to our fellow man. Mary white-smocked, curled up tight-rocked, straight hair blunt-chopped, jawline length, sense gauntness, hollows, eye untrusting, follows not green brainwash cursor, looks askance, the faintest smile at play, perhaps relaying fears to regional that she will not concede. Her rumour cell is windowless, but nonetheless she sees beyond and through her crows, and clucks some pellets forms for them from rations fashioned, drugged, but fasting with the steadfastness of one beyond the lines, inhabiting a world so very far from that around in which no sanity endures. Morning shots, the happy clapped out smiles abound, the miles around the common room, the floating inmates wound, occasionally pausing awestruck at the oozing bilge unceasing from the massive screens, the greasing skids of mental pathways long untrodden, now in wetlands sodden shapeless dressing gowns and sweatbands cannularity. Evening shots, the dreaming, streaming, heavy-limbed paralysis of bleary-eyed, weary, laid and laid by leering warders, patients propped for private channels, winks and nods from regional, a necessary price to pay for all the love and care, and hair dishevelled Mary looks askance and longs for sleep. The inner sanctum of her mind, inviolate, at least for now, despite abuse and daily drugging, id and superego shrugging off the crass attempts to rein them in, and they hold hands for once, since ego firmly out to lunch, and far beyond the techno's ken she tapping into roots of depths ancestral. Millennia of archetypes from those oppressed, the symbols of resistance giving each the power to overcome humiliation, degradation, stamping out of rights, unconscious collective fortress drawbridge up, the siege is on, and Mary inward hard as nails the long game plays in hope of resurrection. Act 2, Scene 2. Quantity most often trumped by quality, and likewise satisfaction gained by slow and tiring toil towards a distant goal. Yet digital bonanza is a flood from none to all, and choice unlimited has prized from tin of greed its sticky lid. And we poor humans, chimps with 2% up top, cannot resist the glitz, and barely turn an eye to blazing blitz of all painstaking crafted heretofore. Those heady days when information freely proffered by enthusiasts, now distant memories, as greed so vast in scale took hold the reins. Accompanied by rabid mount of politics to every item spin and slant, and gore and porn, and lies all left to show in this, our winter net of discontent. James in bed, the pages read, and duly placed beneath the head abuzz, though late, awake and ruminating in a fever, burning up with twisting gut in adolescent anger that the faceless, godless good laid hands upon his queen of crows. Those kids surprised him in the ashes, David 12, young sister Sal, and once his heart returned from orbit, they had filled him in. They friends of Lady Poet living in vicinity in Ranger's cottage, visiting for stories of the older times oft sung in rhymes. They telling her of youthful spy, her smiles, this hard for James. But they were now all allies, see, and men had snatched her. How could they do something for her? Local leaders' red-rimmed eyes were firmly closed, and fingers too about a glassy neck, as James in silence pried amongst the files of weeks ago when bingo news to Dad from regional so plainly spoken Mary's capture and incarceration. Thudding in the ears, the anger flaming, reading closer. Maximum security with no chance of release. Scudding heart, he searches deeper for a ray of hope, some way provoke a weakness in the ring of silicon. He notes a warning of potential sympathizers, too prioritized as having elevated ties. Their details James retains and frames an outline of a ruse to liberate his muse, and quietly withdraws besides the snores the room at peace. Sal staring fixedly at James, the faintest softening of eyes that rarely showed a human side, she mostly mute explaining David. Youngsters three arranged in sheltered bliss of sun-kissed hollow far from Nanny's eyes, behind a long-forsaken ruin several miles from Mary's rubbled shack. James enamoured with these buttons bright, the only souls he trusted with his plans of liberation, and so desperate to hear from David whispering told his queen's tales of old. Her love of Mother Nature too, and science when conducted true, the olden days when life erratic yet romantic. Wasted years in innovation, then Damascus revelation. Finally, the here and now in union with crows and visitors, both young and new. Act 2, Scene 3. It is lonely here on wrong side of the line, like a tree surgeon stranded on wavering limb, or hapless painter corner pinned. I drew that line with mine own hand, and now pariah, sayonara, friends' farewells accompanied by steady gaze, and some, most not. Alone in the midst of a life once lived is no life to live, so I will retire from this scene unseen in an out-of-way quarter of country and dispossess as I myself am dispossessed, relying on some kernel of wit that clinging to life at its edge is the best in these times when I am myself bereft, with ne'er an idea of solution to hand. Regional Tech Fest, brightest best. The future glimpsed, the gadgetry more sneaky still tinier, you'd not know it were there. Yet making life still easier, and tech chiefs hailed, assailed by fans of innovation, queuing up ironically for autographs. And Stephen sitting pale and pained, then struck, a lad Hail Mary whispers. Stephen freezes, signs and glances up, the boy's eyes pleading, leaving in his hands a warmly, moistly notelet folded. Later streets pace Stephen, stops at harbourside against the railings, gazing out, the slow sea lazy, fishes out the scrap and reads that he and Mary's sister asterisked on list, watch out, but help me please to liberate the ex-tech poetess, sincerely yours, and then address in crudesome code. Data sewers of regional, the walls adrip with information. Some is true, most miss or dis, so hit or miss if accuracy reality a goal. But Stephen was well used to this environment, a rat of sorts, and sniffing knew which damply chambers to explore via clicks of mouse, and soon found out. His lad, the son of local boss in parish way to north, quite rural, recognised the face, had met him at some function with more of the same, the paunchy red-rimmed types. And Mary's sister, quite a shock, in Nanny's higher tiers, and asterisked on list with such as her, brought chills and reinforced his sense of ever-crouching woe. Stephen knew the note inditing, act he must and promptly, but which way to go? Choice one, the lad, a lamb to make, a sacrifice, and turn away and stay away 1,000 miles from Mary and her sister. Then choice two, pursue a hopeless course to help this lad, to liberate a woman mad, and all for what? A principle? A ceaseless siren's warning? And if he chose the latter course, a matter but of time before the crushing weight of regional and Nanny too obliterates his every sense. He groaned. That sister, dare he contact her, or was it quicker to insert his head between a lion's jaws, a line beneath his fading life to draw? Act 2, Scene 4. It started 30 years ago, with windscreen wipers activated by a sensor monitoring the droplets and deciding when a swipe would aid Cro-Magnon driver, who presumably was helpless, judging the opacity of glass before his eyes. Of course, the auto-sensor wipe not just unnecessary, but a source of deep frustration, either madly dryly swiping as if caught in cyclone tropical, or leaving lazy lulls regardless of the downpour's pelting pounding. Fuming driver constantly to intervene, but ultimately trapped inside some lame technology displacing freedom's powers. And now this dumb, fascistic, scumful electronic spam has infiltrated every crevice, leaving citizens bereft of any practicable handle on their lives besides consumption. Martha knew that region had a reputation for corruption, but had never taken interest, not in any case her business. Life revolved round Nanny Central, shiny surfaces abounding, faithfully reflecting shiny faces, young or youthful, pearly teeth and perfect skin of tech elite. Their daily joy to toy and constantly the human lot improve. And yet this prime example of a nanny pioneer was showing signs of wear and tear, a wrinkle here and there, a few grey strands amongst her auburn hair, and all because that dream was nightly gripping her and wrenching her from sleep in witching hour, to wake a scream suppressed but only just, the gasping breaths accompanied by heavy sweats, heart palpitating, senses working overtime, recording all this quaking from a former star now asterisked as risk worth taking. Always in her dreams she kneeling, hands held up, imploring, sensing Sister Mary next to her in attitude the same. And high above them, grief immense and bitter were the dregs, the snake uncoiling, smiling fangs extended, pointy dripping venom, and they paralyze the antiseptic stench, and seconds now till death. And eyes snap open, breathing holding, in a conflict suffocating. One such night, awaking 3 a.m. at Tether's End, arises silently. She glides to console, searching for her sister's info. Red screen stops her in her tracks, so craftily she hacks the local leader's profile of that northern outpost, reads the files of Mary's treatments, satisfied that all is well, till fateful click anonymous, but oddly worded link. Rigid, frigid, Martha sat, a prickling down her back, her breathing shallow like a film of oil as that she viewed, despite herself, two mannequins in naked pose, rigged, frigged, and rearranged, repeated. Motionless, defeated, bruised and scarred, one younger, other middle-aged and skeletal, with savage hair, cropped eyes askance, commanding in unconscious stance. The video an hour's show from yesterday, but Martha could not bear to watch beyond the time it took to plumb the level of barbarity and cynical betrayal of re-education. Switching off the red-rimmed screen and still suppressing waking scream, less floating now, moved bathroomward and vomited far more than stomach's contents could allow. Act 3, Scene 1. Men have forgotten God, the sage explained, the collective madness human death tolls with so many zeros that each individual sadness, grief and heartache is obscured entirely in calamities so vast they overwhelm emotion, leaving us no explanation, just the academic bickering who to blame and factors 2 or 10 or more before the strings of millions. 2 generations hence the lessons unobserved by certainty of now, the sure supremacy of present over past, that confidence a fool's mirage no more than desert death, complacency as heady strides are made to cliff-edged fall. This time mayhap not even promise of mistake repeated generation hence, this time mayhap the last, as rebirth vernal, long lost dead, in techno snare eternal. Submerged in blissful dreamless sleep that hour seeding dawn, so deep she almost lulled asleep her senses, sensing not alarm, disarmed perhaps, no harm from witnessing misplaced devotion, jettisoned, halfway by now to sewage plant. Retaining such an asset worthy of new computation, subject stirred automaton-like word and stirred some tech-bright breakfast, logging into console, chirpy messages to colleagues sent, no scent of anything amiss. Martha reckoning on a rest, but later if she acted well, so lulled the systems expertly while feverishly her flight designing. One last hack of leader local, gleaning feeder focal points, then out the door, 10 minutes till anonymous in dodgy quarter, then transform and form some form of rescued retribution. Years since her mind was so clear, see from outside, as if for the first time, nanny malevolent, not no but humorless, cold yet intuitive, dumb power rolled across the floodplains of data, collected each second from everyone everywhere, no one's behaviour unseen, unforeseen. Set possibly hers, as she mixed with the metrotech crowd of commuters, the atmosphere buoyant, oh buoyant as always, solved problems for Nan and head patted for smartness, she jacket discarded and changing gait don cap, buying time-tricking tracking and taking a cab to the far side of tracks. Where lived hopers, no hopers and hopeless, and hopeful she limped into humblest dive, trembling knowing her next hour was coin spinful, dead or alive. Early drinkers, quiet in corners, Martha awkward, mumbled order, bacon roll and double vodka. Sits beside her brass tough blonde, whose baleful, barful decades see right through charade. She own a see, and wants no trouble see, so hook to sling 4 calls are made, leaves Martha frozen, steely, then blurts out she's finally woken, family first, a sister drugged and broken, just needs out of central. Back turned brass behind bar, softly phone spoken. Martha downs drink and gets ready to go, take her chance in the daylight, but brass shakes her head slight, brings vodka, sit tight whispers. 5 minutes later, plaid jacket, scar briefcase in hand, enters bar. Then to kitchen she's beckoned and kitted out quickly, ID, contact lens, sideburns, tash, out of town in rear footwells of car stash, to make her way north, drawn to asterisk brother. Act 3, Scene 2. I scratch words in the ashes of fire, forlorn, with char-ended stick, and my thinking drifts this way and that, before and after, probing fogs receding past, uncertain future. Alt way back, 2 stick-legged girls, well raised it seemed, and serious, though known when alone to each the other, off to set. Divergent paths, but the crows are masters, teaching me a thing or two about the ruggedness of hope, the thickedness of blood. Mayhap I should have stayed in the game, improving from inside, but that not my temperament, no taking prisoners. And so the future is not as uncertain as I pretend to think. The harbour side, his favoured place of late, to think, to contemplate, somewhat detached from prying lens and microphone, and home to those that regional had left behind, and that he yearned for too, forsook, to solve his bind. That evening a gangly, drunken fellow, brown-bagged, bottle-tippling, weaving, almost falling over side, now drawing close, and Stephen's privileged gaze averting. Sensed the alcoholic breath, companionate railings to his left, the voice much softer than led to expect, the spectre come to haunt. They both were on the list. She, Mary's sister, pulled the plug and on the run, now time is precious. Would he help her spring her sister? Under bridge tomorrow night at 10, she had a base but needed him, and felt she knew that he could not but join her. Next day was one of gloom, as if he always knew his head would end in lion's jaw, despite the tugging of the trappings of his life of power. Unconscious was the tower of strength that bent all else to moral will, and bitter pill of sacrifice already on his lips, as with one sweeping look he left his penthouse flat for good. He walked for miles, briefcase in hand, circuitous, but on the stroke of 10 was situated under bridge along with harbour jetsam, needles suffering, stench abounding, next to Martha, androgynous. In whispers nodding found a quiet spot, and through his beacon splashing so no easy trace, she drove in clapped out heap to wretched place, but safe and cleansed from regional. Her eyebrow raised as Casey opens, smiling, feeling gadgets shining. Nanny's slowly rising panic, algorithms buzzing, lines of information branching, possibilities factorial in search for missing asterisks. Sock Psych had vanished in a crowd, and Tech Chief last seen harbourside with limping drunk, mayhap a suicide and drowned, alerting all authorities that something may be up, go down. Martha, Stephen in retreat of 2 rooms, stealing time as human souls broke free from chains of Nan, recounting tales of Mary, and with admiration feeling in their hearts the foresight she procured, the suffering endured. And sides the intimate, they hack and stitch their plan in place, compromising silently, connections linking institution, holding Mary with both local leader, Nanny. Finally, they push the button, fingers crossed that humans as predictable as circuits of computers. Act 3, Scene 3. High seas of techno-slavery, to piracy privacy given up. Blindfold walks the plank and falls to sharks, fizz tacky, sticky advertisers, parasitizers, barnacles on stinking hull that ever mull the means extract last 1% of gold from chest of keel-hauled masses traffic. In heaving nests, no secrets held close to the chests of worker ants, identities are wholly owned, exploited by the colony, and such our lot now decades on from devastating wars, resisting fascist tanks only to overroll in millions, whimperless, and with no casualties, a bloodless, toothless coup d'etat. That patronising windbag, crow-hag, half-nut, soul-slut, third-rate shitbard, causing local leader headaches on both work and homestead fronts. First, concerns from regional about the method of arrest, the need perhaps for sentence less. Some day release was mooted, then confirmed by contacts in the institution, long with quiet advice to hide the nighttime videos before they come to light. Second, household cleaner quietly knocking, afternoon on turning mattress these had found. He felt the spinning room in disbelief. He sees his son in mischief, reading turgid verse from self-same bitch. And after several stiffening drinks, the back door bangs, his son from school is called upstairs, and swaying, glares and accusations slurred and frothed. His son so stony silent, shamed apparently, and then dismissed, and red rim sits midst glowering dark foreboding. Whether the effect of drink or anger at his dipstick son, he snaps and contacts warder mates, suggests a date day hence for day release, except 2 amendments, namely, first at night, and second that at single trip for succubus, a staged escape attempt and tragic death occurring during valiant attempts at poetess recapture. Half hour later, pals reply it's plan inspired, they've had their fun, and Nanny said in any case the poet has no future use. But actions must be secret and untraceable, and consequently deep slept local leader, whilst his son lay incandescent, bluely hardened, cold withal. When rage of such intensity is focused to a spot at 2 a.m., then deeds most foul are within reach of even purer souls. So witness him with lightest tread once more by father's drunken slumber. Ponders patricide, but eye is caught by blinking cursor, Silently he scrolls and reads the recent trail of messages. At mention of the videos, he clicks on link and sees the Crow Queen's rape, and all is clear. Heart bursting. Shadow silent disappears. Mourning misery profound at Mary's drugged abuse, and James is found in ashes of her shack, luxuriating in her aura. Crows in nearby trees give silent strength. Decides to crash the rendezvous that night and try his arm at rescue. Been no sign from Tech Chief, he presumes he is alone. Bar little ones who join him noonish. Spills his anguished love to David, unaware of Sal's eyes sinking, hardening in narrowed redness. Act 3, Scene 4. Ye have the poor with you always, echoing down millennia, spikenard companies, yet nowadays it profits to victory nounce, with suffering trounced and 50 within reach for all. Through monitoring of vital functions, choices made, the fridge door locked unless the quota checked, and coddled happiness the norm. Embraced, set by a few contrary, nary whole in mind, rejecting comfort, slops and care, reside in outer stretches of our metros, far beyond all tracks. They are not poor, but just misguided, wanting shorter life, and God forbid, accompanied by ills and aches, and scrabbling by on booze and pills, with idle talk of independence, cheap at half the price. Someone mentioned day release, but thus must be imagination. Mary knew that any form of liberation not an option. Howsoever, after evening meals routine, the pellets rolled, injections doled, she dragged about, and something strangely different, and echoing in unfamiliar corridors, then fresh air blasting, first for months. It almost wakes her, gulping more, but then engulfs her, darkness, dank, rank back of van. Day release, or night release, or further horror from her warders, Mary coming to between the fits of stupor, hours it seems, then finally a crunch of tires and voices, men's, the door is opening, pine scent clinking, manacles removed. And face familiar, red-rimmed, but inches from her own. She struck, collapses, hauled astraight, and told in slurry speech of hate, to run for it, run for your life. To run, you bitch, to run. Bleeding, reeling from the blow, Crow Lady sways, yet disbelieving, struck again on floor once more, then uphauled silent by the warders. Shocking then, a screaming stop from heart of darkness, intervening, tearful form, hysterical at red-rimmed pushing, then with heavy belting jostled next to Mary. You damned fool, expostulated. Then an eerie silence sues, and jailers argue that a witness must be dealt with too. But local leader adamant, no, it's his son. No sympathy, however, shown. A standoff primed, when whines of whirring gadgets arcing, tranquilizing targets, warders red-rimmed downed, and Mary James left standing, he her feathered frame sustaining in dumbfounded ecstasy. Blood, pine, a strong arm encircling, tender, respectful, how long since, then whispering, hurrying, dreaming, her sister from long ago, surely a brother now, sobbing and hugging, an older man worried, quick, quick, he says, at their feet groaning is growing. She feels herself led by this party fantastical, flashing in memory decade before the one Tech Chief she embered, she sensed offered more. Stephen and Martha had run from their cover, the poet recover, so obviously dazed and bewildered, the boy almost foiling their plan, and now needs must go with them. The warders are stirring, the crazy reunion of sisters in tears, while the Tech Chief so anxious implores them to run to the trees, to the darkness. They're safe, yet are stunned by soul-piercing sound, mournful crack of a gun. Act 4, Scene 1. Humanity now toppling factory meat, selection artificial shaping genome superficial with no inkling tinkling's repercussions, and what stinks the most, dumb earnestness of ethicists. Naivety is so profound it borders on endearing, except their rubber stamping of the ending of our run-down race. Short-term grubby, rubbing hands white-coated ecstasy at playing gods in Olympian labs, yet zooming out these dunghills in the foothills of the towering peaks of Mother Nature, grimly looking she, her children's fiercest, cruelest game, beyond control, recall. 4 in the wreck speed on backroads, a zigzag beat back to retreat, cowering fringe-worthy backstreet. The journey surreal, Martha backseat with sister, relapsed catatonia holding her bony hand dry, and the youth Stephen seemed to know half turned up front, never wavering, ever eyes fixed on his idol, and driver robotic, the gear changes clumsy, in absolute silence, all eerie. An hour they arrived, quiet Martha and youth-bundled poet inside, but Stephen not following. Sister darts out to the car, chiding whispers, but finds the man slumped o'er the wheel, and on opening door sees he's drenched waist down red. Panic rising, forced down, she hauls James out to help her, drag wounded inside. Stephen grey but conscious, calming, staring at his co-conspirator and lad who'd tipped him off, up propped on only bed, the sheets a mess of blood but one wrapped tightly, tourniquet arresting flow from bullet hole in tech chief's thigh. His level gaze now reassures they must continue with their plan to hack the Nan with Mary here and broadcast truth and protests while they can, eyes closing, only resting. Martha, James as yet acquainted not, but sharing blood as stains of brotherhood, and numb when shadow passes over, turning, Mary standing in the doorframe, straight-backed, clear-eyed, purposeful, at long last back to consciousness and comradely intent. James, not yet full grown, obscured not the sisters' steady look at one another, mingling love and seriosity, of which priority claimed first attention, hacking Nan or nursing tender. Racking sobs the youth o'ertaken by events, and comforted by Mary's tall but tiny frame, her cooing sounds as laying hand upon his head, surmising her admirer. Bony hands were later laid on Stephen's brow, her fellow former tech chief, terrified of losing sister out in heap on harbour side to find at least some drugs to help this kind, courageous fellow. Now again from ashen sleep his eyelids fluttered open, accompanied by a smile, being home again, at home in human love. Act 4, Scene 2. Ye shall be hated of all men, so true and such I knew, and sickened at the thought thereof. But duty clear, so clear I must avow the path laid out before me by another's hand, acknowledging it is not me or ye that speak. Yet still my soul is weak if I too close adventure, too unreal reality, that certainty's inanity. It is those moments before sleep, in warmth of post-prayer glow, I know I will endure unto the end, I will at last be saved. Different faces, constant though concern. The lad, the puppetress, her side-burned sis, most often gaunt and scared but kind. And once a tramp, a stink of booze and antiseptic, pain immense, a passing out, but easing since. And hearing from the other room the muffled voices, sometimes reassuringly a giggled reminiscence. That a reacquainting of those thick-legged lassies, Martha somehow finding Doc at harbour side and paying for the slug remove and vowing mum. With tech chief stable, youth as nurse, the women gently set their trap in Nanny's web, knowing time is short, yet needing Stephen's confirmation for the button press, his crafty gadget cloaking them. For hours they hoped. Hand on shoulder, Martha smiling, undisguised, beauty shining. Ready now, it's early morning, start the hack, the hijack sack of Nanny's roam to shock the talk in every home, replacing slops and nanny pap with truth and a resounding slap across the cheek of progress fake, some earnest hours in hope to wake their fellow man. Stephen's voice and iris actuate his hacking beacon, sending Nanny sniffing curs on goose chase wild and leaving them in peace for now at least. His head on pillow rests as from the other room he hears a clearing throat, the button pressed, and Martha cheerily intoning, "Welcome to your freedom." Trough subverted hours 3 before the scrambling nanny techs cracked codes to break the iron grip of gangly goat on screens for all the millions, nearly every channel casting broadly. Mary reading poems, Martha splaining how the land, though evil not, concocts the slops perfecting absolute control. How warnings such as sisters are suppressed, the messengers imprisoned, drugged, abused. Time to wake up, wrest back the reins, embrace the messy, mediocre truth of mortal human life. Despite the sisters' reservations, James insisted on some airtime, reading poems favourite of Mary's and denouncing Nanny, regional, and to his fellow youths appealing, take up freedom, stop the rot, resist that comfy, cosy, rosy. Even Stephen, ashen face, gave solemn speech propped up on pillow, apologizes for his part in techno-trap, and finally all 4 appeared together, pleas for love and brother sisterhood, before the screens went snowy white, then black. Act 4, Scene 3. The slops, sweet daily treat of saccharine, anodyning, dulling senses. Gullibility, fed views each wants to hear, the world makes sense. But daily pinkish, pouring dark streaks bitter tasting, causing sour apple faces as reminder sharply to maintain a healthy sense of fear. Goes up in smoke, establishment perturbed. Any elements threatening such must be removed, re-educated, or if refractory to improvement, ultimately eliminated. As the hive to fall cannot, because of malcontents who fail to understand the rules, be thankful for each crumb from Klectek's table heaving. Infatuation fueled by observation distant of a studied form, the sound of blood in ears when reading verse, dissecting norms, revealing worms of rot and bondage silent, then confronted cheek by jowl cohabitation with the croatess who is a shadow of her former self, in presence physical, she's skeletal, still showing scarring marks of usage ill, and in his heart James feels a tenderness unbearable. A longing to take care of one whose race is almost run, his ardour cooling in its cast to solid love of mother he had never known, and she in turn so loving in her quiet way, admires his courage and enlightened gallantry, yet deep concerned for his, for all their sakes. What steps lie next and must be briskly taken. Hours after hack was ended, darkness closing in, and time to move, disperse, not be a sitting duck for Nanny's squads, so rabid to extinguish cyber saboteurs. They have a plan of sorts, poor Stephen frail, though stable with great effort, sconced in car and head all 4 to harbourside, where Tech Chief wished to be abandoned, left in hands of those distressed to take his chances disappearing in their needle-bottled midst. Goodbyes are tearful, hopes that they might meet again in freer times, but eyes and voices, fears betray that day will never come. They leave the man courageous, limping stiffly neath the bridge, and head on north, remoteness known to James and Mary, hoping there for sanctuary, be it fragile, temporary. Martha driving, Mary sits in back with James, in darkness pitched on back roads northward. Holding hands with tenderness and murmuring in gentle tones, my dear, we 3 are likely gathered up in days or weeks ahead, so many spies alerted, and with you so young, your life to live, your leadership to give, in future wars it's best to be apart from us, perchance some leniency to draw. He objects, not caring for these words of sense. His place, his only place by Mary's side, but slowly, gently is brought round, and so they plan for him covert to contact pals, for them to shelter him for now. The car is parked within a mile of Ranger's house, and James and Mary hug, exchange a virgin's kiss, and he sets off in blackness tearful. On the morn reveals himself to David, hid in distant shed and fed, while Sal in turn is distant, calmly bitter still. Act 4, Scene 4. Increasing faint, now barely heard, those voices crying in the wilderness. Those rare brave souls in camel's hair, with locust's breath and honeyed hands, so helpless by their sides, hung down, no works atone, waist deep alone, forlorn in Jordan's stillness. As the unconscious collective hums the constant low, reminding souls in dreams of mysteries for us all, unseen, thus robbing us of grace, of holding hands in awe of stranger. Drugs are bound to confound that hum, forbidding its approach in hours twixt 2 and 4, and we remain at peace, unlearned, untested. As surmised for regional and nanny, having slops perverted, troughs inverted, causes stirrings of distress and seeds unrest. No time is lost explaining plicity and lies of renegade fools, detractors dissipated, their sick tarnishing of common good. Yes, justice will be swift and sharp, all channels monitoring, and helped that morning by a tip-off from a lassie wee with heart of gold. The lad to nab a poster child can be corrected, had no chance, an orphan now, since local leader liquidated, for stupidity if nothing else. Oblivious, the sisters to these machinations, car abandoned, backpacked hiking deep in forests well beyond the usual places, nosy parkers. Not naive about what lies ahead, but staking claims to freedom while they can. 2 weeks hence, in forests dense, hard by a gully, sisters camping, weary, happy. After days they finding voices new, meaning old, with simpler thoughts and purer, miring nature, holding hands, walking lanes of memories that sisters share, with mostly laughter of those times of innocence, naivety, within the cradle of a loving family. They sit beside a tiny fire, heating soup of foraged finds. These past few days companionship from clucking crows, accepting Martha into families of old. And later, as the daylight fades, Martha's head on Mary's shoulder, close they whisper, as the embers glow and shadows fall to night. Their love is swallowed up by darkness' might. A children's park, a sunny day, a carnival of sorts at play, celebrating Nanny Tech, the happiness for all it brings. Families around arena, dads some red-rimmed, hold aloft their banners favoured, logos harmless, wholesome colours primary. The mums are pale, the children stern and bored, then speakers blaze out main event. 2 figures led out from a van and forced to kneel before a makeshift stage with personnel, white clinical. It's blinding when the hood's removed. Squinting, park, a crowd, the drone-like hum. Your sister near, exchange a look of love, a word of courage, raise your hands together, prayer, implore the Lord forgive them for their sins. In unison, approached and jabbed, and seconds later falling forward, ware of dying breaths of one another. Epilogue. It is the young our only hope, to break this spiral of tomfoolery, of arrogance, of knowing best, of self-congratulation, each new wave of techno-fetters binding, blinding those in awe. Let us pray the young in natural wisdom see beyond the bauble's glitter, strike the balance chord of science mystery, making starkly clear our need, humility. Indeed, our obligation is but simply stated, love our neighbour as ourselves. In this our gaudy show our failure is immense, so let us pray the young in natural wisdom see beyond the godless good.